What is your favorite part and the best part of the two races you run? You do the longer sprints, your 200 meters and 400 meters. What do you like about those two races?
My favorite part about those races is the final 100 meters of the 400, which I think is super controversial because you're dying for those final 100 meters. But especially in the 4x4, that's when you catch people. That's when like the chasing really starts to happen. And that's my personal favorite part. I'm a chaser. I run fastest when there's someone ahead of me and I need to beat them.
One thing about this outdoor season, for the most part, all you've done is win. How much did what happened at indoors affect your mental preparation for the outdoor season?
Indoor is pretty similar to everything that happened outdoor, but just to a smaller scale. Especially with indoor nationals, it was the first time that there was physical protesters at my meet. And so the weight of being at national competition and then also having a group of people protesting me as I competed kind of got in my head a bit. But since then, after it happens so frequently, you start to get that kind of mental fortitude and you learn how to block it out and really focus on your race. So I'm much more prepared to go into this competition with a clear head.
There were protesters at indoor nationals over you.
Yeah, there was a small group of them, and they were yelling at me, especially once I finished my race. I didn't notice too much because especially for a 200, when you lock in, I don't hear what's happening around me. I'm just focused on running. So I really didn't notice anything until after I'd finished my race.
One thing that happened to you at indoors I do want to focus on is you ran your race, you won your heat, you think your time is fast enough, and then an entire heat sweeps you and three other people out.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like?
It's not something you can be mad at. There's a lot of great fast athletes, and I'm super dependent on the race that I run. Since I am a chaser, I go to win my heat, and if there's no one with me for that final 50 meters, that final 100 meters, it really affects my race. And so, there's nothing you can do. You get in a heat and you win it, and if everyone else is faster, everyone else is faster.
Complete this sentence. For Sadie Schreiner to be on that podium or at the top of that podium this week, I'm going to have to do blank.
My best is probably the best response. My coaches always focus on making sure I'm relaxed. When I run my races, I'll tense up too much, and so I always run best when I get to stay relaxed. And that's really when any athlete runs their fastest, is when they're relaxed and confident.
How does your art play into your sport? Because one thing, in photography, you definitely have an eye, and your graphic art is stunning. How does that all work into all the facets of your life?
Yeah, I've been doing photography since 7th grade, 8th grade. I focused on it a lot in high school. I did my own independent study. I started even like this mini AP program for the high school that I graduated in. And then I knew going into college, I wanted to focus on photography. It's actually some of the first few photos I ever took and printed. I knew I wanted to come to RIT for that. And I'm a very design-oriented person, especially with my photography. I love the cleanness of advertising. And I was struggling to find an outlet to how I felt when everything started to happen. And I didn't really know how to express myself, especially since I'm just some college student. I don't have a platform. I don't have anything to really speak outwards to. So I just went to my art, the thing that I do every single day for school anyway, and really used it to just try and express myself and how I felt.
Walk me through it. What led you to build this particular piece?
Yeah, so there's a few layers to it. The first is one of the assignments I was given for class was called the 100, and it was simple. Find anything that references, 100, a large quantity, and make a piece about it. And so I wanted to make a piece about, it's way more than 100, but all the comments and things that are said about me. And how it really, words define who you are. And I wanted to kind of visualize that in my own sense. And so all the text on the screen that makes up myself in this image is just comments taken from Twitter, from random people, or from my Instagram page. You also have this kind of like eye in the top right. That's something that shows up in a lot of my works around this topic. I have a few more that I just made that I've yet to upload. But it's my kind of like visualization of the viewer. And that's why it's have that like 3D element on the image itself.
Now, when you hear people calling you that word, what goes through your mind?
A lot of things go through my mind. Um, it's become kind of numbing at this point. You know, it's the first thing that everyone goes to. The amount of times I've been called a cheater is it's impossible to count. Um, but usually I find it comes from just a lack of understanding. You know, there's a lot of people who don't know what hormone replacement therapy is like, that even go through it. You know, there's people who think that transitioning is just saying, oh, I'm trans and I get to compete on the women's team, and they don't even know like NCAA's policy. Um, and so when I hear that, I usually go back to like misinformation. And one of the things I really harp on about is just telling my story, you know, showing my documentation of everything that's happened to kind of prove this scientifically backed explanation as to why, you know, I am equitable to compete in the women's division.
There's something on your Instagram which really struck me because this tells me you're ready to take on Indianapolis if it comes to it. Quote, I'm trying hard to get my voice out there as I have more than enough evidence to prove the equitability of the NCAA's current policy. I would hate to lose the sport I've been competing in for 9 years. Okay, Sadie, walk me through it. Walk me
Yeah.
through that.
So I've been competing in track and field for 9 years. The majority of that has been running the 400, which is my favorite event. Um, and you know, through middle school, I was state championship. I was setting school records. In high school, I was top of my league. And I started taking medication, and my time plateaued at a nice 50 point. And I went into RIT with that time. You know, the coach is expecting that I was going to whittle down. And even I thought that only like 3 months on medication wouldn't do that much to my body. But I go into the track team, and everything's completely different. You know, I'm working out, and my calves start to explode. In the future, like 6 months down the road, I start having workouts where I'm running so hard that I can't walk the next day, because I'm running at these times my body can't keep up with anymore. And I very quickly noticed that this wasn't something where I was out of shape. This was something where things were different and I needed to adjust. And so I took the year to myself and I didn't compete. And I come back, and all of a sudden I went from running a 50 point to running a 60 point. And we've been slowly cutting that time back down as I've gotten more used to the way my body works. Um, but it's a speed that I'll never be able to reach again, I'm sure.
So make sure I get the timeline right. You started HRT before you started college.
Yeah. So I knew I was trans throughout my high school life, but I knew transitioning would have complications with the track team. So I waited until the last like month or two of my senior year of track to go on medication. And then I started to socially transition going into college so I could come in as Sadie, as who I am.
Mhm.
Um, and since then, I've been on medication for 2 years now.
So so essentially, freshman year of college, he was like, "No, I'm taking this year off. I'm taking
Yeah.
this year off. I'm gonna figure. I want to learn who I am."
Not even just
And
that, but like I need to learn how my body works because I notice a huge decrease in my muscles, really in my legs especially. I visualize running sometimes as like shifting gears, you know, between different speeds you could go, and all of a sudden I was incapable of shifting gears. I was unable to just get faster. It was either sprint or jog, and there's nothing in between. Um, and it was a telltale sign to me that you know, my muscles were different and my body was different. And unless I changed how I was working out, I wasn't going to get any improvement.
now, how did you do that? I want to know this for me. I wish we had. I wish I could have talked to you like 5 years ago. I wish I could have heard this.
Trial and error, honestly. a lot of it was fighting my own mental, like, my own mentality of I used to be able to run this time, I should be running this time in the workout. Um, and I would do that and I would destroy my calves and be unable to walk. And so it became tapering and experimentation for a year as I figured out what worked and what didn't. One of the biggest things that I realized pretty early on was that drills involving high accelerations, so going from slow to top speed, those were the most brutal on me and my legs. Um, just because I'm sure that 1 year point, as my muscles were changing and how they grew, my calves really became a lot weaker. And so that transition of speed would start to really wear down on my legs. And so I had to think of other ways to work out, other longer drills, focusing on endurance before I could start to go back to speed.
How do you keep yourself above the noise?
You just kind of have to. It sounds weird to say, but I'm still a college student. I'm still an athlete. I have to go to practice every day. I have to complete my classes. I have to do my work, and focusing on that is how you get through it. Things don't just stop because someone says something negative about you. You have to keep going, and so probably a lot of resilience is and stubbornness on my end is what does it.
Has there ever been a point when it's just like, would these people leave me alone and just let me run?
Yeah, for sure. But at points like those is when I reach out to my team and, ask to hang out and they, help distract me. And that's usually how I handle it.
So one thing, how important is that?
Super
For those who
important.
may not understand it, how important is it to know that my team is backing me, my coaches are backing me? They're not going to just leave me hanging out there to deal with
It's
all this alone.
yeah, it's everything. Even just one person, having someone who is just positive towards you really makes a difference. When you feel like there's this huge amount of negativity in your life, when you have all these people like screaming at you, um, even just having one person be kind to you really ends up making your day and making that difference.
This week, when you look at who's going to be in these races with you, who sticks out to you as far as, if I'm going to get to where I want to go, I know that I've got to deal with this person. I figure one would definitely be Kennedy Wade from Mount Union.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is super competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if someone drops a 53 in the 400 or if there's another 23 in the 200. There's a lot of competitive athletes and it's a really close race. Um, I have a lot of friends from U of R who I'm excited to see at nationals and compete with, and they're probably the people I'm most excited to race against. Racing against your buddies and racing against your friends.
How hot is there a rivalry between RIT and U of R?
Not a huge one. U of R is such a competitive college and such a nationally ranked college that we're not fully there yet. We're striving our hardest to get there, and I think especially next year we're going to have some crazy performances and we're going to really take a stand. I think that's when the rivalry will really start.
I know one person who from U of R who probably hasn't forgotten about you, maybe even throwing darts at your picture, and that's Madeline O'Connell.
I love Madeline O'Connell. She's probably my favorite person to race against because we really push each other. I know that a lot of my top times wouldn't be there if I wasn't in a race against her, because having that person to chase and having that person to pace with really makes all the difference.
Liberty League 400 final. Walk me through the back end of that, because you were fourth at the 200 meter mark.
Yeah. So I think I said this earlier. I'm a tense runner. I tense up really easily, and my coaches know that. So before the race, I was told, take the first 200 at like 99%. Stay fast, but stay relaxed. And once you hit that 200 meter mark, that's when you go. I'm very much a chaser. When I see someone in front of me, I do everything I can to pass them. So having that distance be created in front of me in the 200 and then catching in the final 200, that's my specialty.
Have you thought about the history involved? In NCAA history, you've had 3 transgender student athletes who are first team All-Americans. Have you even thought about, I could be number 4?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I really look up to athletes like Cece Telfer and Leah Thomas. So to follow in their footsteps is big for me. I don't think it's something that's fully hit yet. It's kind of surreal to be at this point.
Since you mentioned CC Telfer, you do realize that Championship Saturday lands exactly 5 years to the day that she won her national championship.
I didn't know that until just now, but that seems pretty poetic in a lot of ways.
5 years to the no, literally, it's 5 years to the day. It was May 25th, 2019.
Wow.
As part of this interview, there's somebody very important who I've invited to it. Hey, Cece, what up? It's been a little while. Meet Sadie Schreiner.
We met actually in Boston.
Oh, you did meet?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I invite her on this thing real quick, mainly because I thought you guys never met, but it turns out you did. But also,
actually, we competed together.
Yeah,
not directly
really?
together.
Okay,
but we were at
okay. What was that like? Okay, I gotta get the tea on that. What was that like?
I mean, you can ask her first, but and I'll answer after.
My team honestly freaked out when they realized we were competing in the same meet as CC Telfer. And I was super excited to watch her compete. We were doing different events. I was doing the 200 and 400, but I definitely made an effort to try and say hi.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, I don't know if that was the meet that I got disqualified out of because I false started, which was probably like my last race of the indoor season. But I was just so focused on staying focused and blocking out all the hate because I already knew how everybody was looking at me and treating me, and I already knew how the coaches, like, they hated that my presence was there, and I was the girl to beat. So everybody was already like ready to like take my crown or whatever. You know what I mean? So I was just really on one, like trying to like put on like my game face, my don't fuck with me face. And I was trying to like pretty much like not look at any support, anybody in the audience, because if I do see somebody that I know, or if I do acknowledge or like, break that focus, it like breaks everything overall. So I try to like really stay in the zone and stay in the like, yeah, just stay in that execution zone. And um yeah, I saw Sadie like after I got disqualified and I was like walking back to go like get my shit and like leave. She introduced herself and I immediately like made the connection because I think you had sent me an Instagram DM prior to that meet, and I did see it, but I couldn't respond because I don't know what was going on at the time, but I didn't have a chance to respond. And then I saw you at the track meet and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I will respond to your message. Immediately recognized you though. From the DMs, obviously, but it was awesome. It was amazing to see you there. It was amazing to see another girl like me, um, just living her truth in her power. And it felt good to know that I wasn't the only one there. That, I mean, I don't know if you were out, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it felt good to not only be the only trans girl at the track meet. And yeah, I loved seeing you there. I loved your presence, and I was just trying really, really hard to like not fight somebody.
I'm a super talkative person. If I walk in too early, I get really nervous. So I love talking to people on the infield and people competing. And seeing you there really, really helped shake my nerves because it was such a big meet. You know, having someone there who had gone through the same stuff and was going through the same stuff that I was really made that difference for me. And helped clear my head in a lot of ways, especially I think going into that 200.
How did you do in the 200?
Way better than I expected to. It was the first meet where I really hit like decent times in the 400 and 200. The
Okay.
400 The 400 for me indoors is way worse than outdoor because
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense to me. But it was the first meet because I think a lot of those D1 and D2 athletes were there that I was really able to chase someone and push myself.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
It's
On 200 and 100.
okay. All of us are crazy. You do the 400 and you love it. You do the 400. You did the 400 hurdles and love it. Me, I did both of those events at a different point in my life, and now I'm playing women's tackle football in my 50s. We're all nuts. What from your experience could you give to Sadie heading into this week to process and maintain through what's going to be? Because let's face it, the haters are going to hate.
Yup. Sadie, to give you any advice going into this next chapter of your season is to really like focus on your race, focus on you, and just really, I'm sorry to say this, like put in your mindset that nobody's there for you. You know, you got to rely on the support that is there, and everybody wants to see you lose. They don't want to see you win. Besides your teammate, besides the people that love you, which means you know you have to rely on that love, that support, um, and really run your race. Focus on you and run your race. Warm up, do everything that you've been practicing in practice and outside of that. Like really focus on you and what you need to do, not what other people have or what they're doing. You know what I mean? Because our stories, our journeys are different, and yours is very unique, and you need every single ounce of focus and energy and positivity going into any national race. So you really just need to collect yourself, do whatever you have to do to stay in that healthy mindset, and just remember to execute, and give it everything. If you cross that finish line and you're not dead, you did something wrong.
I definitely know that, especially for 400.
Now, what has that meant to you? To not only compete, because obviously you love track. If you love the 400 meters, and no one loves the 400 meters, let's be real, and I think the race is like the greatest race alive. And I'll even be like, dang, 400 at a master's meal. I'll be like, why did I enter the 400? You reevaluate your life choices, but what about competing as who you are, as the woman you are? Why does that matter so much?
Track has become my life in a lot of ways. You know, it's had such a huge influence on me growing up as like a middle schooler and having, you know, an 8th grader become my mentor, and then being a mentor to the kids under me, and having the same thing happen in high school and the same thing happen in college. It's really just this great learning experience of mentorship and self-improvement in a way that I don't think I'd get anywhere else, especially with such a sport like track where there's such, you know, focus on bettering yourself and bettering your times. I don't really know where I'd be without it. I think I'd be a completely different person entirely. And for the longest time, I battled with, should I transition or should I just compete as I am because I know it'll be easier? And I tried for a long time to keep that kind of bottled up, but you can only really deny like who you are for so long before it starts to take too much of a mental toll. And so being able to present as who I am, being able to be who I am, being able to compete as who I am are super important.